This is Join Us in France, episode 507. 507. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we take a conversational journey through the beauty, culture, and flavors of France. Today, I bring you a behind-the-scenes look into Paris 2024 with Patricia Perry, who was a volunteer there and worked there and saw lots of things, as well as, of course, my reactions and impressions and thoughts. I can't wait to share all of that. It was really exciting. This podcast is supported by donors and listeners who buy my tours and services, including my itinerary consult service, my GPS self-guided tours of Paris on the Voice Map app, or take a day trip with me around the southwest of France in my electric car. You can browse all of that at my boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique. And Patreon supporters get new episodes ad-free and as soon as they are ready. Be like them. Follow the link in the show notes. For the magazine part of the podcast, after my chat with Patricia today, I'll discuss my trip to Lille with my husband, David, and give you a preview of episodes to come because we saw some wonderful stuff. Bonjour, Patricia Perry, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie. It's great to be back. Good to see you.
Yes, it's nice to have you back. Okay, today it's going to be a treat because you're going to give us the behind-the-scenes view into the Paris 2024 Olympics because you were a volunteer there.
Yay! Yes, I was.
So you survived. It was a lot of work, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What inspired this was that somebody on the Facebook group said, she wrote to me and she says, "You're the only person I know in France. I want to tell you how much I appreciate your country's hosting the Olympics. It was amazing, so professional, so welcoming. The artistry blew me away. I'm guessing when I speak for a lot of folks, when I say thank you, people of France, your Olympics gave me hope for our world." And that was very touching, but I had absolutely nothing to do with it. You did, however.
Well, I think they gave happy pills to a lot of French people because, nobody talked about politics and everybody was just ecstatic whether French won a medal or performed well. So,
yes.
Yeah. I don't know. All the grumpy Parisians were gone, banned. I don't know where they went to.
I feel a little badly that I said a few times, I mean, not in so many words, but I kind of implied you might want to not be in Paris for the Olympics. It might not go well. I was not as positive as I would have been had I known.
And the regular venues like the Louvre museums, fancy restaurants, and typical tourist areas were very, very empty. Everybody was at the Olympic stuff.
Right. Most of the people came to enjoy the events.
Yeah.
I think a lot of other visitors stayed away because they were scared away by all the possible, security things, all the restrictions on movement. And there were a lot of things that, a lot could have gone wrong and nothing did. It's like shocking.
Yeah. But, there were over 50,000 police and probably another 50,000 private security, 45,000 volunteers. So a massive logistical effort to make things run smoothly and keep security at appropriate levels. So it was amazing.
People send me questions that I submitted to you. So I just want you to tell us the thing, how did they pull this off? Tell us about the experience of being a volunteer at the Paris 2024 Olympics.
Yeah, I started, it was like maybe 10 months before you had an online application if you wanted to apply. And it had lots of little details. I think there were like 100 questions. And there was this whole, what was almost like a personality survey that you would get when you maybe went to work for a corporation. I don't think it was really appropriate for volunteers, but, I think they were using it as a tool to try and get in a sense of, would this be a good fit for a volunteer organization or not? So, submit that, and then you don't hear from them for months and months and months. You don't know. And then one day you get a message like, "Oh, you've been selected," but you're not told what you're doing. And in the application process, you indicate whether you have any special expertise, have experience in sporting events, whether you have any licenses, in particular areas, maybe you've been a judge in an area or something like that.
Yeah.
Or any languages that you might know, although they took your word for it. There was no test. And I can tell you, if you don't speak French, you're not going to really do well with any of these volunteer groups because everything was in French, really, except for talking to the athletes or the foreigners. Most of them use English as the second language. So, but within the volunteer communications, it was all French.
But did you get the impression most of these French people could speak English who were fellow volunteers?
Yeah, they all had some level of English, although a lot of them really were going to speak it to you, you know. And if they got some, you know, I remember getting somebody with a very heavy, you know, Asian accent, Chinese accent. They had no idea what he was saying, but, you know, I could understand what he was saying in English and respond to him because I've heard all these weird accents in English before. So, you know, right, it's not so hard. So anyway, you get a message back, and then they had a big in-person meeting at a big stadium, actually where the swimming pools went in La Défense. There were swimming pools weren't there then because they were a temporary thing. And they had like 20,000 people there. And not everybody was from the Paris area. I've had people from different areas in France that came for that. It was just like a Saturday morning. And it was like a big cheerleading rally. But the big, they didn't really tell you anything, except the big reveal was the costumes, what they look like, you know, uniforms. That was the, and I think they were just kind of the rah-rah getting things together. And then after that, there was like a series of about 10 modules online that you needed to complete, and had little quizzes after. There were video modules. And basically, they were all about, okay, be nice, smile, be happy.
That worked, though.
It did work, yes.
You know, you have to tell people stuff like that. French people, you have to tell them to smile and be happy. Otherwise, they're not gonna.
But everybody was, you know, very, very friendly and nice and all that kind of stuff. So eventually, about a month or so, you get a message about what team you've been assigned to and what days. And on your application, you indicate what period of time you can work. So you just get kind of a schedule and a venue about which I had no choice. And I got a lot of weird schedules, but because actually they're starting like at 5 a.m. and they're going till like after midnight because of the schedule of the Olympics, you know, getting things ready beforehand and closing things up afterwards. So I had a lot of days when I started at 5:30, and then other days when I worked the night shift starting at 6:30 and getting off at 1. And we had plenty of people so you basically had to cover about 3 shifts or so.
How many shifts did you do altogether?
It was like 12 out of 14 days.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of my schedule. I think the volunteers, like there were 45,000 volunteers, about 50% were foreign. And on my team, that was not true. We had about 35 people and 2 Americans, 1 Mexican, 1 Italian, and 1 Australian on my team.
Were these people who live in Paris, or did they come just for that?
One of the Australians just came for the trip, and then another couple of Americans that actually came in one of my team, but they came in, they worked as volunteers. So they came from the U.S. and once again, they had to pay their own way here and pay for their lodging. So it's a big commitment if you don't live here. Most of them were French. Most of them had family or friends that lived in Paris they could stay with. So that made it a lot more feasible than having to pay for a hotel or whatever for a 2-week period.
Yeah. What was the venue where you were working?
I was assigned to the prettiest venue, the Grand Palais and the Pont Alexandre, kind of a combined area. The Grand Palais, as you may know, has been under renovation for the past 2 years. And what they did complete is the Grand Nef area inside that. And that was where fencing and taekwondo was held. And then the Pont Alexandre was where the swimming started from, a number of the cycling events, and the marathon started there on that bridge. I went through that bridge. And so it was a complicated venue because sometimes during the marathon or running events, we'd have, block off different streets or block off different bridges. And it was very confusing for people and transportation. As a member on the transportation team, I wasn't working with the general public. We were concerned with the transportation for the athletes, the officials, their support team, which might include physical therapists, medicine, doctors, coaches, VIPs also took care of. So those were kind of our clients. So it was a mixture of buses that were shuttling athletes back and forth from the Olympic Village, which took about 25, 30 minutes. And those were official Olympic vehicles like cars and vans that were for smaller parties like the officials or the federation bosses or Olympic managers, those kinds of people. And then we had to have a staging area where we would collect cars that would then come pick up the individuals, like the staging area for the VIPs and coaches and those kinds of things. And for example, it was, really high security where the buses, they left from a secured area in the village. So when the athletes got on board, all the windows had to be up. The doors were sealed. The luggage compartments were all sealed. And they couldn't stop or open anything on the way until they came inside the secured area in the Grand Palais, where they would check, like with a mirror or underneath the chassis. And then, everybody would get their badge scanned when they exited the bus. Then they got sealed once again once they left, dropping off the athletes. So really a highly secured area. And even all the volunteers, we had a badge. And every time we went in or out, we had to go through our badge scan and going through basically airport style security. Clear out your pockets, take off your backpack, take off anything metal to go inside the secured area. And they really took security very seriously.
Yeah. And those buses, so it's funny because when we drove back from Lille to Châteauroux, we had to go through the periphery of Paris, and we ran into that Olympic lane with all the buses, Olympic buses and official vehicles. And man, it created massive traffic jams, which I was figuring it would, but there was no way around it. We had to go through that area. But the buses were booking it, man. They were like, sure.
Yeah. So like I said, if they didn't get lost, because they would get lost sometimes when they got to our venue, because they kept changing the barriers. If there was a triathlon going on, they might have the bridges blocked, or if it was not a triathlon day and a regular fencing day, then other things would be blocked. So it was complicated. We would change positions and change what we were doing based upon the transportation needs for that day.
So did you ever talk to the public, or were you mostly talking to the athletes and the staff and people like that?
There was one posting that was inside the secured area to the buses that brought the athletes and coaches in. And on those days, when you talk to them sometimes when they would come back out to catch the bus back. When they got off the bus, they were busy, getting to go where they needed to go to. But when they were going back, maybe they had to wait, 20 minutes or 15 minutes for the next bus. I would talk to them, and I knew nothing. The two sports that were there, fencing and taekwondo, I knew nothing about. So I would ask them about, and try to learn about escrime, because, that's really kind of like France owns that sport, and that's where they got their first medals. And they always win medals in fencing, which includes foil, épée, and saber. And they all have different rules. And they all go very fast. And taekwondo, I knew nothing about. It comes from Korea. And they have little sensors on their toes that when they touch an area, they get a point. And the same is true for all the fencing. Everything's electronified. So when they touch to get a point, they have to touch in the electronified torso area. Or I think on saber, they can touch on the arms. But each one has a different, they're all scored by these electronic touching sensors now. So kind of interesting. They go so fast. I don't know who won that one. No. I can only tell by looking at the scoreboard,
Yeah. So you could see some of the events going on some of the time anyway.
During a break, I might be able to go in, because I was always posted outside the Grand Palais. I was never inside. So I might go inside and sneak a little view in an area, for 5 or 10 minutes. But we weren't really authorized to go be in the spectator area. So that really wasn't our place to be. We were outside people.
Minions doing the work. Were there any perks to doing this? Like, did you get any perks?
Yeah, we did get a nice uniform, which included, everybody kind of recognizes the volunteer uniform now, that turquoise striped. We got 4 shirts, a hat, which they call a bob, kind of like a safari hat, and 2 pairs of pants with like it had zip off type legs with shorts, 4 pairs of socks and shoes and a jacket and a vest. So we got that. And then we got a Swatch watch that supposedly works with your Visa card to tap to pay, but I never got mine to work. And we got a water bottle branded with Coke, that they were one of the sponsors. And then kind of our going away gift was a beach bag, waterproof beach bag with a Olympic sponsored towel and soap and a little Olympic pen.
All right.
And we did get transportation cards for use inside of Paris, but you don't get tickets. You don't get free admission. You don't get discounts on any merch. You really don't get a lot.
Yeah, for all the work you've done,
Yeah.
it seems like the uniform is like the least they can do.
And there are a lot of paid people too. Like there were paid people doing some of the same stuff we were doing. So I guess, and they really had a lot of extra staff. We didn't all need to be there, but I can see if things went wrong, they would need more people. That was the same that was true with, I think the police force. There were 4 cops every 50 meters. And lots of them were, like us, in between things, they're doing nothing until something happens,
Yeah, yeah.
And, there was like one guy who was kind of irritating and I think he had some mental health issues. And as soon as he started acting up, they came and took him away. Nobody really was able to misbehave, at all. And they weren't bad about it. I mean, the cops were like, I was at the rowing venue and he offered to take a picture of me and my sister-in-law, my brother. No, they were taking pictures of people. They were having people take pictures with them. They were really on their friendly mode, which is not the usual mode,
No. Yeah, normally no.
And like I would get a Veliba, one of the city rental bikes to go to work early in the morning since the metro wasn't running yet. Go through all the red lights and, right with the cops there. They didn't care. So it was quite mellow and like, okay, passed on through. You've got your little magic accreditations and, helpful, I think, making sure that volunteers could, get through security, barriers where they needed to. And like I said, the accreditations were very specific. You were only accredited to go into a certain area, only for the time that you were actually working there. So you couldn't use your accreditations to get into a different venue or to be there when you weren't supposed to be there. They were very, very specific about accreditation. So,
yeah. Yeah. Did they give you any training on what to do? Like if somebody brandished a Palestinian flag or, or started beating somebody up?
No, but there were so many cops around. If they were disarming people or really creating a disruption that might be dangerous, like it would say, but there would be 4 cops within 50 meters. So,
yeah,
there's not going to be an issue. It's just not going to happen. I mean, and people would try and park where they didn't want to. Like there was some officious Paris government guy who told me that, no, I can park wherever I want to. And I told him, okay, well, you park here and I'll pretty much guarantee you your car won't be here when you get back.
Mm-hmm.
And he went away.
Yeah.
People were grumpy because a lot of, places where they wanted to park, like, no, that's a bus loading area. There's not a bus there right now, but there will be. So you can't park there.
Yeah.
So mostly shooing people away that wanted to park somewhere. Even police, I had no, you can't park here. No. But you're like, yes, I can tell the police that they can't park here.
Yeah. So in Lille, the night before we went, I drove the area just to see where we could park. And a couple of volunteers just said, go away, woman. And I did. I mean, I didn't give them any hard time. And the next day when it was time for us to go to the events, we just took the metro. The metro was super well organized. They had people channeling you like, this is the way in. And then on the way back, you didn't exit the same place you came in. They had people the whole way guiding you. They had a guy at the door selling us tickets because we were just going between the center of Lille. I parked the car underneath the Grand Place and got off the metro. The entrance is right there. And the guy had a ticket machine around his neck and he just sold us the ticket we needed for the day. And we didn't have to mess with anything. There were helpful people everywhere.
Yeah, they had a lot of extra metro people, RATP people that probably had at least 5 extra people at each station standing around to be helpful, plus police that were there. So incredibly overstaffed. And I think there were still some pretty heavily populated metros just because, these venues for lots of people were going.
And then we had to wait for the next metro. I mean, they made us line up and they did the typical thing where they're parking you in an area and then they want to hurry and fill up the car as fast as possible so the car can move and another one can come in. Because the Lille metro is the same as the Toulouse metro. And so I was familiar with the system and they had a car every 35 seconds. So they wanted to get as many people in as possible. And the cars, they could never get the car full because it was going to move on so fast that you had plenty of, you had 2 meters around you, which was better, actually. Yeah. On the way back, it was more crammed and it was hot. Oh, very hot. You must have been hot too.
Yeah, there were some really hot metros and we had several days where it just rained and rained. And it was really strange. I was just using a clear poncho, to keep the rain off. That's the jackets we had really weren't waterproof.
Uh-huh.
I don't think they really expected rain all day long in Paris at that time of the year, but we did have it one day. And that was why, the following day, they had to cancel. There was a swimming test in the sun, but with all that rain, they had problems with water quality. So they had to cancel the next early morning swimming test, but they were able to schedule it for, I think, 2 days later. It was okay. So.
Yeah. So you also went to other events, right? You had family visiting, so you went to other things.
Yeah. My sister-in-law is a big rower. So we went out to the nautical stadium on the Marne, about 14 or 15 kilometers east of Paris. And it's a beautiful venue. And in the rowing, they row for 2 kilometers. So it needs to be really flat, nice water. And they have these lanes divided up. So we went there from 9 to 1 o'clock one day to see a lot of the rowing events. It was a beautiful venue, very nicely done. I also went to tennis at Roland Garros, which I've been to many times. That's where the French Open is held. But it was hot. It was there in the afternoon, one of those hot afternoons. And fortunately was covered a little bit by part of the roof that it wasn't closed, but the edge of the roof, it was at least in the shadow. And I saw Djokovic play or kind of crush a little German guy, So, well, the German did okay, but, you play Djokovic, and he's going to crush you.
Yes.
So that was nice. And I went to table tennis, which was at the Southern Auditorium, which is very nearby where I live. And although I had pretty good seats, that's something else that just goes way too fast for me to follow. And, when I'm looking at it on TV at home, it was like, who won that point? It's like they just go lightning speed fast. And then the most impressive one I went to when I saw the beach volleyball at the Eiffel Tower Stadium, which was very iconic, the Eiffel Tower and the sunset in the background and these enormous stadium seats that they had put up. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, when I noticed that they were doing night volleyball, like beach volleyball at night, I thought it's never going to work, but it did. It was gorgeous.
Because it was too hot during the afternoon.
Right. And after sunset, the light was just beautiful. I mean, I saw it on TV. I wasn't there, but it looked gorgeous.
Yeah, it was a really pretty venue. The stadiums were big. They had a lot of people there. So, and in a lot of the places, I know nearly all the outside venues, they had these little misting things. So you could kind of go through it. They would have a series of 10 of them or so. So you kind of go get misted and wet to cool off. So they had those at all of the outdoor venues. And they had also free stations to refill your water bottle. They had very good toilets at all the venues, it's important. Flush toilets, not just tin cans, So they'd set up septic systems and they were really nice. They kept really clean. And the other very impressive thing is all of these venues were wired with electricity. There were no generators. There's no all these generators running, making a big noise in the background. They got electricity throughout all the, electricity and internet and big screens. They had big screens at all the venues also. So you could, watch on the screen if you really couldn't see it from your seat. And the prettiest venue was the Grand Nef of the Grand Palais. It was gorgeous. The athletes would come down these beautiful Art Deco stairs to come to the platform where they were going to have the competition. And, it's an enormous area with very high ceilings. It's air conditioned. The seats were great. They had big big screens around the seating area so you could see the score and see the plays and the replays. And I have to say the camera work was fantastic on all of the events that I watched.
Yeah.
They did just a fantastic job.
Yeah. And on TV, I watched it on Max, so HBO Max. And you could get some of the things, you could get the commentary either in English or in French, not for every event.
But for a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, it was very well done, I thought. You know, you could follow. I had the TV on all day, which I never do.
Yeah.
And I would just go from one thing. And the one sport that I was very impressed with is the breakdance. I didn't think I would like it. It was so fun to watch. Like, it was so, like, what do I know about breakdance? I mean, you know, nothing at all. But it was very fun to watch. I mean, I have favorite sports. Of course, I loved basketball. The French women just broke my heart. Oh. 1 point. 1 point.
But, you know, another thing about the Olympics too this time was like they really gave equal play and there were a lot of equal fan time for women and men.
Absolutely.
Never seen that before.
This was outstanding. I mean, the women's sports were just as important as the men's sports. They would show the guys during the women's final. Mm-hmm. They would show the male athletes who came to watch. And they were like cheering, you know, Wembama was cheering for the French women. It was really great to see. And you can't miss him. He's so tall. Macron was at a lot of, he never came to one of your events.
He was at Grand Palais, but I did not see him. He did not come and talk to me. But I did. I heard that he was, you know, you always hear when the big boys are around.
Yeah. They always show them on TV and everything. Listen, it was such a fun, I mean, the whole sports experience was outstanding. The athletes put on a fantastic show. Everybody was on their best behavior. I don't know.
The opening ceremony was fantastic. I must give a lot of credit to the director, Thomas Jolly, who did both the opening and the closing ceremony. He's a genius. Yeah. And he had to do all this without rehearsing a lot. You know, he could do bits and pieces, and then they had to do it all in the rain, you know, for the opening ceremony.
The rain that night
it was pouring. It was pouring that night.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yes. And it worked.
Yeah. Nothing, you know, no dancers fell down. No, you know.
The guy who was doing the parkour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Running across.
Right. I was like, he's going to
fall.
But I'm sure they had different people doing it because it would have been too strenuous. And besides, they would pick up
too many different
on the
venues.
other side of Paris, you know. So if you know Paris, you're like, no, there's no way he ran that fast.
No.
So even if you go up the roof, not going that fast. But it was really, that thread was great. The mechanical horse, I didn't enjoy as much because it went on too long.
After the speeches, you know, somebody used to tell like Tony Estanguet and Thomas Bach, they're not gifted speakers and they should not be allowed to talk for more than 10 seconds.
So I love this quote. He said, "Les Français, c'est un peuple d'irréductibles râleurs devenus supporters déchaînés." So like insufferable complainers, râleurs, like it turned into crazy supporters, crazy fans.
Oh yeah, like after it was a French woman that won the escrime, you know, the gold medal. You know, they just went nuts. The Marseillaise, they were singing the Marseillaise. They were just standing and jumping up and down in the Grand Palais. And the same thing when a French woman won the Taekwondo gold medal. They just went nuts. I was outside. I could hear the big roar come out from, you know, the inside the Grand Palais. Like it's a French won something.
Yes. But even with the other, because I never saw the French teams play live, but you know, we were supporting. There were people from Puerto Rico because I saw Puerto Rico versus Spain women basketball. And I was for the Spanish women. But the Puerto Ricans, there was a bunch of Puerto Ricans behind us and David was cheering for the Puerto Ricans. And we cheered plenty. It was fun. You know, everybody had fun.
Yeah, and I'm going to claim half of the medal for Léon Marchand. He lives and trains in the U.S. So.
That's true. But he is from Toulouse.
He's from Toulouse.
Toac all the way. Toac is his swimming club, and that's where I went to swim when I was a kid, as in the area where I grew up.
He was great and so modest and,
Well, it might get to his head.
well, eventually. The only thing I didn't like about the closing ceremony was like, I don't need to see Tom Cruise there. I'd rather watch an athlete do stuff than Tom Cruise do stuff.
He was taking the Olympics to the Americas. It was all,
Well, have an athlete do it, not an old actor,
Yes. I mean, you do have plenty of worthy athletes who would have done a very nice job. Because America has plenty of wonderful athletes.
Yeah, let Simone Biles do it. So.
No, I agree.
But I love the closing ceremony, the stranger, it was like a Cirque du Soleil on steroids. That was fantastic. Another fantastic, kudo to Thomas Joly, though.
So it's interesting because the opening ceremonies were so open and like along this long spread out area, but the closing ceremonies was very contained but packed. There were so many people. It felt like this is gonna burst. It was really fascinating to watch. And the opening ceremonies, I mean, I was ready for an explosion or something horrible to happen, honestly. And I was so relieved when it didn't. And there were so many nods to French history that I really enjoyed. Oh, yeah,
kind of built in.
I think most people who are not French or
not
Francophiles, study French history, whatever, wouldn't have gotten it. But the mood was kind of trippy and surreal. The rain made it even worse. They really worked hard to bring together all parts of French culture, the old and the new. Anytime there was music, it's like they took my playlist, like it was 80s and 90s music, that all the French people know. But French class, French things that French people know. Then when they got to the conciergerie and they had Gojira, it's a French hard rock group. I don't listen to hard rock, but I knew who they were. And they opened with the beheaded head of Marie Antoinette singing a revolutionary song that,
okay.
I'm like, what's happening? So French people caught that.
And on the closing, that Paris hymn that was sung was another like, this is really a French deal going on here. So
yeah. And Forêt, that's Forêt song. I love Forêt, but I didn't recognize it. If the announcer hadn't said this was blah, blah, blah by Forêt, I was like, oh, lovely.
Yeah, because they dug it up from the past someplace. So it's not one of his well-known, vocal pieces. Exactly.
I really enjoyed that. The opening ceremonies, I enjoyed like Lady Gaga doing Mon Truc en Plume.
In French,
In French, yeah. She was really great. The Marie Antoinette was shocking. But, singing, really? She would have never sung that.
No.
It's a song about justice and about, but she was beheaded when she sang it. So, and my favorite still was the Aya Nakamura, who sang
who sang
the medley of the Charles Aznavour songs with the Garde Républicaine.
But on the drums behind.
Right. With the drums and the French horn players that were trying to dance. They were just barely moving.
Yeah.
And they were all smiling. You could tell they were having this riot. They're military guys. That's just not what they do. The drums were kind of waving a little bit. Anyway, it was fantastic. The fireworks on the Pont des Arts was great. And this whole thing by Aya Nakamura was very controversial because she's famous for speaking bad French. That's what people say. Well, she speaks bad French, that she makes up sounds and words and whatever. And it's true that, oh, gaja, or whatever she calls it. I'm like, what is she singing about? And apparently that's what young people call a guy who's a cheat.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know. My daughter had to tell me, she was like, this is what it means.
Yeah.
So she translated the young speak for me. I had heard the song, but never paid any attention. And people in my generation and older were bitching that she was not a good representative of France, blah, blah, blah. But then they put her in front of the Pont des Arts. L'Académie Française
was right behind her.
Behind her. La Garde Nationale was there. And that's what I loved about it. And she is a stunning performer. It was beautifully done. The dancer she's had with her it was all great. Just couldn't be beat.
Yeah, and the contrast was, like you say, was made it pointed and interesting.
Yes. And then, of course, they had the minions, which I was keeping an eye on the Facebook group. Where there was a discussion going on in the Facebook group while the opening ceremonies were going on. And somebody complained about the minions. I don't want to see minions. I'm like, well, the minions are French. They're made by a company in Paris that draws all of that. And if you listen to them, they speak baby French. They do. If you know baby French, you get the minions. Then they had the drag queen show. They had the ménage à trois, which I totally missed.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think that was not so controversial. Like, so what?
Yeah. Somebody the next day said, did you like the ménage à trois? I'm like, what ménage à trois? And I didn't see it. Like, I've lived a sheltered life. What can I tell you? The Bacchus, the supper of Bacchus, the nu.
Yeah, I thought it was just funny,
It was just funny. And the guy after the next day was like Schtroumpf references. Because he was blue. whatever.
Like a blue man. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a blue man. And the big lady behind him, apparently she's a drag queen.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know.
I didn't know.
My daughter had to tell me all these things. The next day she was like, oh, she's famous. She's a drag queen. She's this. And she's like, oh, really? Oh, I didn't know. But it was all fine. Like, and Celine Dion to me was just, she's so good.
What a comeback,
Yes. Yeah. She really, what a performer. She's incredible.
And she sang live too. Not everybody did, which I can perfectly understand given the circumstances. So, but she was singing live and all the water on the pianos, stuff like woo! Everybody's getting soaked.
Yeah. So really, it was a beautiful, gorgeous show. What are you going to say about that? I mean, there were plenty of people who misunderstood some of the references. And I think a lot of the misunderstanding, I mean, if you watched it in French, in France, we had the commentators would actually tell people what this was because there were a lot of kind of tableaus, it was like a play.
So, they were like 12 acts or something,
Right. So this tableau is about this. And they would briefly explain it. And most French people who have a reasonable education got it. But these were kind of very French things. And so I understand that in other countries, it didn't play as well. And if they didn't enjoy the whole, the show aspect of it, maybe
they may not have gotten I think they might have not gotten the references, but it was still a spectacular show, even if you didn't understand all the references.
Yeah. So I hope that the Paralympics, which are going to start in a couple of weeks, will be just as fun. And I'll be in Paris for that. I hope I'll get to go into all the same venues because for the Paralympics, we got kind of tickets that are like multi-event things.
Okay, so you'll go to Roland Garros for that.
We probably will go to several different things. And if we don't, I will just buy extra tickets because I'm sure they're not going to be super expensive.
No, I saw some like for 15 euros,
Yeah. And so French people complained that the tickets were super expensive and they did the smart thing. They sold the expensive tickets first to people who were going to pay whatever it took, right? To get a seat at the finals or at the semifinals. And then they sold me tickets for the basketball. I paid, I think, $130 per game, which is not outrageous. I mean, I've paid that much and more for NBA games.
I paid like $150 average for the tickets places, that these I went to. But they were all good seats and, all good draws also.
Yeah. I'm sure lots of people didn't buy anything. The people of Paris, do you have friends who left who just said, oh, I'm getting out of town because I can't take this?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of people like, no. But they would be leaving anyway. This would be, this is not unusual then. This would be the time of, the year that my neighborhood clears out because it's just residential and everybody goes on vacation. So there's nobody here anyway.
But they were probably like, oh, I should have stayed. Maybe it would have been fun.
Yeah, maybe. No, but
I hope the Paralympics have half the spirit of the regular Olympics because it was so much fun to watch and to participate, even though I didn't do I just went to a couple of games, but I loved them.
The French, they were just, I think the average, they just, once they started winning medals, and France won a lot of medals in this Olympics. They just really turned on the support and the happy factor. Just,
yeah, and French people were down on things. We're like pessimistic. Yeah, we're like, it's gonna be crap, blah, 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 blah. And we're like, oh my goodness, it wasn't crap. It was great. It was fantastic.
No, they were singing along and clapping and cheering and screaming. Yeah, all of the French on my team, like when they won, like, yay!
That's fantastic. So are you happy you were a volunteer for the Paris Olympics?
Yeah. Like I said, I met a lot of nice people that, are Parisians that I'm hoping to keep up with, make some new friendships and that kind of thing. And there was practically, I would say the bonjour to everybody that when I was working outside on the street waiting, like, I got a bonjour back, like from 99% of the people, like, okay, you're going to bonjour me back, aren't you? Come on.
And they usually did.
And they did, yeah. The cops did, even though probably Parisians would. They just would let them pass by without noticing, like, I said bonjour to you. You know what you got to do.
Yes. So in the south of France, it's normal. You say bonjour, they respond bonjour. In Toulouse, normal. But in Paris, I never say bonjour to anybody because they just look at
I don't either. Like, what do you want?
You try to crack a joke about anything in Paris. So you go into the metro in Toulouse and you make a joke about how full it is, and everybody laughs and moves and makes room for you. In Paris, you try the same thing. They look at you like,
they won't say anything back.
No, they're not talking to you, weirdo.
Yeah, you're just some crazy nut with something loose in your head. So
it was a wonderful diversion, and I hope that the diversion continues with the Paralympics, honestly.
Yeah, I do too. I think Paris will learn a lot from the Paralympics. They need to do a better job, with people with mobility issues and that kind of thing, which they mostly kind of like, they would devote 10% effort to it. But I think they're going to really devote 90% effort to it for these 2 weeks, and they'll learn from it. So, and that would be a good thing.
Yeah. So I'm looking at some of the questions that people asked that we didn't get to. Let's see. Let's get to these questions. Oh, somebody had a question about, will there be people who want the beds after the Olympics are over? Are they going to be recycled? I don't know. I know the housing is going to be sold as apartments, as condos.
Yeah. They're just little bitty rooms, like 2 beds in them. There's no kitchen. There's just like 2 beds and a bathroom shower. That's it. So they'll have to knock down the walls to make them, like a full-size apartment with a kitchen and all that kind of stuff. So they already have that plan to do that. I don't know what they're going to go for up there. I think a certain percentage are, designed to be HLM, subsidized housing, but others are going to be set at market price. It's still kind of an out-of-the-way neighborhood, but, they definitely poured a lot of money into it with the Olympics.
And a lot of money into the transportation, because Line 14 now is really great.
Well, that's all part of the big extra Paris Metro project that's scheduled to be finished in about 5 years. It's really going to make the Paris Metro system, it's going to bring in all the suburb areas and really, I think, make Paris a much more integrated metropolitan area than it is now. That's going to be a big change.
Did you see the Olympic cauldron?
Yeah, that was really cool. And you can buy tickets to go see it, but you can't until the next Paralympics start. So yeah, that's turned out to be a real spectator sport too, getting a ticket and going down and watch the cauldron, light up and take off. It's a tethered balloon, but it's another fantastic visual effect. I mean, that and, besides the metro, but also cleaning up the Seine is also a magical thing for Paris. So there's a lot of benefits tied to Paris.
Yeah. And the whole cauldron, I'll just mention it briefly, but this was a nod to French history that I understood immediately because of voice map tours that I write. That's the sort of stuff I put in the voice map tours. So 1783, it was a big year for balloons, both hot air and hydrogen. And the first manned or peopled, I guess, flight of a hydrogen balloon took place in the Tuileries Garden on December 1st, 1783. So that's what they're referencing. I thought it was beautiful. I got it immediately because I didn't know what was going to happen. We hadn't seen the cauldron. It was all a mystery,
Yeah.
We didn't know what was going to happen. I thought it was gorgeous, right on, just brilliant people.
Yeah. And it looks so good, because it goes up like it's sunset. So you get the sunset and then you get this fake kind of fire mist thing that they created as part of the cauldron. And it's beautiful.
We should go one night.
When you're here.
Paralympics, we can go together.
Yeah, we'll have to get tickets though.
We'll have to get tickets. I need to see which night of that week we don't have any evening things going on because I don't have the tickets. I need to get them transferred to me so I can see exactly, when we're going to be busy. Okay. But I'm sure we'll hang out.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Thank you so much, Patricia. You're awesome. Thank you for volunteering and helping make these Olympics truly spectacular. It was fantastic.
It was. I enjoyed it. It was a great experience, both me as a spectator and as a volunteer.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Ciao, Eddie.
Au revoir. Again, I want to thank my patrons for giving back and supporting the show. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing that. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. A special shout out this week of our Join Us in France champions, Craig Cruz, Gwen Birgel, Thomas M., Bernadette Ferrandez, Stephen Nicholson, Aaron Siegler, Beverly, and Eileen McNally. Would you join them too? You can do it for as little as $2 a month. Go to patreon.com/join us. And to support Elise, go to patreon.com/Elise Art. That's ELYSART. Thank you for your one-time donation, Isabel Cole-Scott. Isabel wrote, so happy you did a show on the Sant area. That's the area I'm planning to explore next month and hopefully move to in the upcoming years. Wow, that's wonderful. In the last 2 weeks, I published several rewards for my patrons, including a kitchen table convo with Elise that you can get if you're either my patron or hers. And I want to read a couple of reviews of my Montmartre tour this week. Amazing tour, says one person. First, it did a good job. So slowly climbing the hill versus walking up the million stairs. It's not quite a million stairs, but it is a lot of stairs. Second, great job by the narrator on how this area intersects with French culture. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I do bring French culture into all the voice maps that I publish. Another one also about the Montmartre tour. This has been insightful and fun. Thank you so much for this wonderful walk through Montmartre. Thank you for doing that. And if you want to see reviews of my tours, there are many of them on VoiceMap on the app itself. Or you can go to my boutique and then click through to the tours. If you're planning a trip to France and have questions that didn't get answered in an episode of the podcast, you can hire me to be your itinerary consultant. I offer 2 levels of itinerary consultations, the Bonjour service or the VIP service. It's always a pleasure to get on Zoom and give you some advice about the things that might be tripping you up. To begin, visit joinusinfrance.com/boutique and read the page. Read it. Really read it. It's all there. My husband and I went on a lovely road trip that took us to our Olympic basketball events in Villeneuve-d'Ascq, a wonderful city near Lille. We drove my MG Marvel R EV and we made 2 stops along the way. The first one was in Bourges, the beautiful city with a beautiful cathedral. I had not visited Bourges before. We only spent 1 night there, but we got a good appreciation for how wonderful of a city it is. And I think you could easily spend a couple of days there exploring this area. And then the next day, we went to Guédelon. Guédelon is this marvelous medieval chateau that they built from scratch. Starting about 20 years ago. The chateau is almost completed by now, but they are going to continue with it by building a village. At any rate, I'm looking forward to publishing a whole episode about Guédelon with one of you who have visited, and I have a few people who've responded to my call, so that's wonderful. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful place. Then we drove the next day, also a full day of driving, to our little hamlet where I had booked a gîte. It was called Olhain, Olhain. It was a very bucolic, very nice place. We got there late and just fell into bed. And the next morning, we went to Boulogne-sur-Mer for the day. Boulogne is an industrial town, but you know what? It also has a very, very nice city center. And I think it's worth exploring if you're in the area. And I'll tell you why when we do an episode about that. That day, we also drove to Cap Grinet, from where we could see Cap Blanc-Nez, a very nice coastal area that it was quite windy indeed. And this was, an early August day, but it was very, very nice. We stopped in Ypres. We saw, as we were driving along, we saw a lot of corons, which are the names that we give to the mining housing, kind of the company housing that miners got. And also les terrils, which are the kind of hills made of the leftover stuff. We saw some wonderful World War I memorials, including Vimy and the New Zealander, I can't remember the name right now, but there's a New Zealand quarry in the area as well. Just gorgeous stuff. Then we went to Lille, where we spent a full day looking around. It was very hot that day. It doesn't get hot that often in Lille, but it was that day. It was in full Olympic spirit. It was fantastic. I had the best muscles I've had my whole life. Oh, so good. The next day was basketball day. We spent most of that day, going to the events. We saw 2 women's games. They were both fantastic. The Puerto Rico ladies almost beat the Spaniards, but the Spanish ladies were just a tad more disciplined. But the Puerto Ricans had so much spirit and spunk, and it was very fun. And we also saw China versus Australia. And the Chinese team, they played really, really well, but they played really, really by the book. And as someone who's photographed basketball for a long time, I kind of know the systems, and I could see it coming. And I'm sure the opponents totally could see it coming as well. So they need to mix it up a bit more. But anyway, beautiful games. It was fantastic to watch the games and not be, behind the camera. Next day, we went to the Musée de la Mine de Levarde. I have to do an episode about the mining in this area. It's all gone, really, but it was so much fun and so interesting to see what's left and to hear the tales. And I was very lucky because one of the last retired miners was doing a just kind of question and answer session. And he talked to us, and he, on purpose, he was speaking ch'ti a lot of the time. This was a group in French, all French people. My husband was the only one who was not native French, I think. And he was quite lost. After a while, he wasn't sitting next to me. He got there late. He was sitting there playing with his phone. I'm like, yeah, he's lost. Because the guy kept on throwing in ch'ti words. And the Frenchies had a hard time following him. So I can't imagine for him. Anyway, beautiful experience. I can't wait to tell you all about it. We did a quick visit to the city of Douai, which, nothing much there, I must admit. I don't think that's one that you need to stop at. We went to the Lens et le Musée Louvre-Lens, which was very interesting, pretty small, but I really enjoyed the pieces that they had. They have some really treasures there. Then that same day, we went to Vimy and saw the memorial of Vimy. Very sobering. And we arrived too late to take a tour that day, so we went back the next morning for the tour, and we got to walk around the trenches. They explained to us what they were doing, why they were digging all of these trenches. A very nice French-Canadian person who gave us a tour. We went to Arras. Oh, what a town, Arras. The architecture was just very, very nice. We saw the cathedral. We saw a thing about the Battle of Arras. That's where the New Zealanders came into play. La Bataille d'Artois was a very interesting visit. But what was the name of the thing? I can't remember. I'll find it. When I do the episode about it, I'll find all the details. We went to Amiens and we got on a Jules Verne kick. It was fun because we listened to a book of his on the way. It was Around the World in 80 Days, I think is the one we listened to together in the car. And I've been on a Jules Verne kick ever since because on Audible, it turns out that a lot of these translated books into English are free. I can get them free with my subscription. So I've listened to several. I started 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea today. Be fun. It's a nice city, lots of things to see having to do with Jules Verne. I really enjoyed it. The Grand Place and the cathedral were very impressive, especially the cathedral. That is a big church. And then it was time to go home. And on the way back down, we made a stop for the night in Châteauroux, which I wanted to see it because I had never stopped in Châteauroux. I always bypassed it, never stopped. I thought, take a look. You never know. Yeah. I'll be bypassing it in the future. It's not bad. They had an Olympic event. They had precision shooting, and they had some Olympic spirit there. It was good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that there's nothing all that impressive to visit. So I wouldn't put it on my must-see list. At any rate, it was a lovely road trip. It gave me lots of ideas for episodes to come. So that was fantastic. My thanks to podcast editors Anne and Christian Kotoven, who produced the transcripts. Next week on the podcast, an episode about gourmet dining and AOC wines in the Rhone Valley with Jennifer and Emma Jerzik. It will be a delicious episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2024 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.